Okay, I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but here we are. I, 34M, have been married to my wife, 32F, for 6 years, together for 9. For most of that time, I genuinely believed we were solid. Not perfect, no relationship is, but stable, you know? We had routines, inside jokes, plans for the future. Or at least I thought we did. Lately, though, something's been off. And I don't mean in a vague, we're drifting apart kind of way. I mean sharp, noticeable changes that hit you in the gut but you can't fully explain yet. She's always been intense. Strong personality, quick to snap, brutally honest, or so I thought. But over the past few months, it's like that dial got cranked all the way up. Small things turn into arguments. I ask a simple question like, "Hey, what time will you be home?" And suddenly I'm controlling or interrogating her. And the lying, that's the part one couldn't ignore anymore. At first, it was little stuff, like saying she was at work late, but then I'd hear background noise that didn't sound like the office. Or she'd tell me she was with a friend, but later the details wouldn't match up. When I pointed it out, she'd get defensive immediately, like aggressively defensive. "Why are you acting paranoid? You always twist things. You're imagining problems because your life is boring." That kind of thing. I started questioning myself. Like maybe I was overthinking. Maybe stress from work was getting to me. But at the same time, my gut wouldn't shut up. And then there were the sudden changes in her habits. New clothes, different perfume that she claimed she'd always had. Which is just not true. Going out more often, glued to her phone but angling the screen away from me. One night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. and noticed she wasn't in bed. Found her in the living room, whispering on the phone. The second she saw me, she hung up and snapped. "Can you not sneak up on people like that?" Jesus. I wasn't even sneaking. I just walked in. When I asked who she was talking to, she said, "My coworker. We're dealing with a work issue. Not everything is your business." 2 in the morning. Yeah. That was probably the first moment I felt that cold, sinking feeling in my chest. The kind where something clicks into place, but you're not ready to say it out loud yet. I didn't have proof. Just fragments. Weird moments. Contradictions. But it was starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. And I wish I could say that was the worst part. It wasn't. So after that 2 a.m. phone call, I couldn't just go back to normal. Something in my brain flipped. Not full-on paranoia, but more like hyper-awareness. Every little inconsistency started standing out. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. No mention of the call, no weird energy. Just casually scrolling her phone. Sipping coffee like we didn't have this giant unspoken thing hanging in the air. I tried to bring it up calmly. "Hey, last night, who were you talking to?" And instantly, her tone changed. "Are we doing this again?" she said, not even looking up. "I already told you. Work." No explanation, no detail. Just shut down. I pushed a little, probably more than I should have. At 2 in the morning, though? She slammed her mug down harder than necessary. "Not everyone has your boring 9 to 5 schedule, okay? Some of us actually have responsibilities." That stung more than I expected. Not just what she said, but how fast she went on the attack. It wasn't a conversation, it was deflection, aggression. Shut it down. That became the pattern. Every question equals I'm the problem. Every concern equals I'm insecure. Every inconsistency equals I misunderstood. At some point, I stopped asking directly. Not because I trusted her, but because I was tired of being made to feel crazy. But here's where things started getting harder to ignore. About a week later, she told me she had a team dinner after work. Said she'd be home around 10. Cool, normal, whatever. 10 p.m. came and went. No message. Midnight, nothing. I texted, "Hey, everything okay?" She replied 40 minutes later. "Yeah, still out. Stop hovering. Stop hovering." At 1:30 a.m., she finally came home. She smelled like alcohol, not unusual, but also like a cologne I don't use. I noticed it immediately. I didn't even say anything at first. I just noticed. She kicked off her shoes, looked at me sitting on the couch, and rolled her eyes. "What?" I said, "Nothing. Just waiting up." She laughed. Not a nice laugh. More like mocking. "You're acting weird again." Again. I asked how the dinner was. She said, "Fine." I asked who went. She paused. Just for a second, but I saw it. "Just the team," she said. "No names. No details." So I tried something different. I mentioned one of her coworkers she talks about a lot. "Oh, was Mark there?" She blinked, then shook her head. "No. He's on leave this week." That was interesting, because I clearly remembered her telling me 2 days earlier that Mark had just gotten back from leave. I didn't call it out right away. I just nodded like I believed her. But inside, something tightened. That wasn't a small inconsistency. That was a straight-up contradiction. And for the first time, I had this very clear thought. She's not just being distant. She's lying. A lot. And I started wondering how far it actually goes. After that night, I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. Not in a dramatic, "I'm done" kind of way, more like I started quietly paying attention, connecting dots, letting things play out instead of confronting every single inconsistency and getting shut down again. Because at that point, arguing with her felt pointless. She was always 3 steps ahead, deflecting, twisting, flipping it back on me. I'd walk into a conversation with a simple question and walk out feeling like I owed her an apology. So yeah, I went quiet, and that's when things got louder. A few days later, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. That almost never happened. She's been glued to it lately, takes it everywhere, even to the bathroom most of the time. I wasn't planning to check it. I know how that sounds, but seriously, I was just making coffee. But then the screen lit up. A notification. No name, just a number. And a message preview. "Last night was insane. I can't stop thinking about you." I just stood there staring at it. My brain didn't even process it right away. Felt disconnected. Like I was reading someone else's life. Then another message came in. "Miss you already." That's when my chest dropped. Like physically. That heavy, hollow feeling. I picked up the phone. And yeah, I know people are going to have opinions about that. Privacy, trust, whatever. But let's be real, at that point, what trust? I opened the messages. The thread wasn't long, which somehow made it worse. It wasn't months of buildup. It was recent, fresh, explicit. Flirty messages, plans, inside jokes I'd never heard before. And then details about that team dinner. It wasn't a team dinner. It was just the 2 of them. Drinks. Then back to his place because it's closer. I don't think I need to spell out the rest. There it was. Clear as day. No more guessing. No more gut feeling. Just truth. Ugly, direct, undeniable. And the weirdest part? I didn't explode. I didn't throw the phone or storm into the bathroom or start yelling. I just put it back exactly where it was. Sat down. And waited. I could hear the shower running. Same as always. Same normal morning sounds. Water, pipes, everything exactly the same as every other day. But nothing was the same anymore. I remember staring at the wall and thinking, so this is it. This is the moment everything actually breaks. And suddenly all those little things, every lie, every snapped response, every late night, just clicked into place like a finished puzzle I didn't want to see. She came out of the shower a few minutes later, towel around her hair, completely casual. "Why are you just sitting there like that?" she asked. Same tone, slightly annoyed, like I'm the weird one. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel confused. I felt certain, and that certainty was heavy as hell. I said, "We need to talk." She sighed, actually sighed. "About what now?" And yeah, that's where everything started to come apart. She didn't even sit down at first. Just stood there, arms crossed, already irritated. Like this was going to be another one of my episodes. "What is it?" she said. "I'm already running late." That line hit differently this time. Running late for what? Work? Or something else? I stayed calm. Honestly, calmer than I expected. "I saw your messages." That's it. No yelling. No accusations. Just the truth dropped in the middle of the room. For a split second, her face changed. Not guilt exactly. More like calculation. Then it was gone. I don't know what you're talking about, she said immediately. No pause. No hesitation. Just straight denial. I actually let out a small laugh. Couldn't help it. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Don't do that, I said. Not right now. She rolled her eyes and walked past me toward the closet. Seriously, I don't have time for this. You've been acting paranoid for weeks. And there it was again. Flip the script, make me the problem. I followed her. It's not paranoia when I literally read it, I said. The messages. From last night. Back to his place? Can't stop thinking about you? She froze for a second while grabbing a shirt. Then she turned around, and this time the irritation was gone. Now it was anger. Sharp. Defensive. Almost aggressive. So you went through my phone? She snapped. I just stared at her. That's what you're going with? I asked. That's your issue here? Yes, actually, she shot back. That's a massive violation of privacy. What the hell is wrong with you? It was surreal. I'm standing there, knowing she cheated, and somehow I'm being put on trial. You cheated on me? I said, more firmly this time. She shook her head immediately. No, I didn't. Just flat out lie. I felt something in me crack a little right there. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet internal shift. Then what is it? I asked. Explain it. She hesitated. Just for a moment. Then, it's not what you think. Of course it is. It's just talking, she continued. We had drinks, yeah, but nothing happened. People flirt. It doesn't mean anything. I blinked. You went back to his place. It was closer, she snapped. I didn't want to deal with a taxi at night. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Out of proportion. I actually felt my hands shaking a little at that point. Not from rage. More from the sheer disbelief. I read the messages, I repeated. You're not even trying to make it believable. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice like she was trying to control the narrative. You're twisting things, she said. You always do this. You take something small and turn it into drama. Something small. That phrase, yeah, that one stuck. Because now it wasn't just denial. It was minimization, gaslighting. All of it right there in real time. And the worst part? A version of me like the old me would have started doubting myself again. Would have thought, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm overreacting, but not this time. This time I knew exactly what I saw. And more importantly, I knew exactly who I was dealing with. That's when I started watching. Not in some obsessive tracking every move way, but enough to confirm what I already knew, and to understand how deep this actually went. That same evening, she came home like everything was normal. Dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, gave me a quick glance. You still in a mood? She asked, half annoyed. No apology. No attempt to revisit the morning. Just irritation that I hadn't magically reset. I said, no, I'm good. And that seemed to satisfy her, which was insane to me, the situation we were in, and that was enough for her to move on. But again, it fit the pattern. If I don't push, she doesn't have to deal with it. We had dinner in near silence. She was on her phone most of the time, smirking at something, typing, stopping, typing again. At one point I asked, work? She didn't even look up. Yeah. I knew it was a lie, and for the first time I didn't challenge it. I just nodded. And that's when I realized something else. She was comfortable lying, comfortable hiding things in plain sight, comfortable assuming I either wouldn't notice or wouldn't do anything about it. That hurt in a different way. Not sharp like betrayal, but dull, heavy, like being underestimated in your own life. Later that night, she said she had to step out for a bit. No explanation, no details, just grabbed her keys. I asked, where are you going? She sighed, already irritated again. Why do you need a full report every time I leave the house? I don't, I said. Just asking. Out. she replied. I'll be back. And then she left. No kiss goodbye. No see you later. Just gone. I waited about 10 minutes. Then I got up, grabbed my jacket, and followed. Again, not proud of it. But at that point, I needed to see it with my own eyes. No more messages, no more secondhand evidence. Reality. She got into her car and drove across town. I kept my distance, heart pounding the whole time. Not from fear of being caught, but from this weird mix of dread and confirmation. Like I already knew what I was about to see. But some part of me still hoped I was wrong. She pulled into a parking lot outside a small bar. Not somewhere we usually go. Not somewhere she's ever mentioned. I parked a bit further down and watched. A few minutes later, a guy walked up to her car. She got out, and without hesitation, she hugged him. Not a casual hug. Not a hi, nice to see you. It was familiar, intimate, comfortable, like this wasn't new. And then she smiled. That smile. Yeah, I recognized it. Just hadn't seen it directed at me in a while. They went inside together, and I just sat there in my car, staring at the entrance. And that was it. That was the moment any remaining doubt, any tiny, stupid piece of hope, finally died. I wasn't imagining anything. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't twisting things. I was watching my wife choose someone else, in real time, and somehow, that hurt even more than everything I'd already seen. I don't know how long I sat in that car. Long enough for the initial shock to wear off, and for something colder to take its place. Because seeing it live, no screens, no messages, no interpretation, just her choosing to be there with him? Yeah. That hits different. At some point, I got out, not to go in. I wasn't ready for a public scene, and honestly, I didn't trust myself not to lose it if I saw them up close. I just walked a bit, around the block, trying to process, trying to breathe. My head was loud, thoughts stacking on top of each other. How many times has this happened? Was this the same guy from the messages? Do they laugh like that every time? Does she talk about me while she's sitting across from him? That last one. Yeah, that one stuck. After maybe 40 minutes, I went back to the car. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit there all night like some ghost outside her life. So I left, went home, and that drive back. Quietest car ride of my life. No music. No thoughts I could fully hold on to. Just this heavy awareness that everything I believed about my relationship was gone. When she came back around 2 a.m. again, I was awake. Same as before. But this time, it wasn't confusion or suspicion sitting in my chest. It was certainty. She walked in, saw me on the couch and paused for half a second. "You're still up?" she asked. Same tone. Slightly annoyed. Slightly cautious. "Yeah," I said. "Couldn't sleep." She shrugged, kicked off her shoes, started heading toward the bedroom. No explanation. No mention of where she'd been. So I asked, "Good night?" She stopped, but didn't turn around. "Fine. Just fine." I almost laughed again. Not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it all was. "Where did you go?" I asked. There was that pause again. Then, "Out." Same answer as before. Same lie. I stood up. "Which bar?" Now she turned around. And there it was, that look. Irritation mixed with something sharper. "Why are you interrogating me?" she snapped. "I already told you I was out." "I know where you were," I said. Silence. Real silence this time. Not defensive. Not loud. Just still. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What does that mean?" I held her gaze. "It means I saw you." Another pause. And for the first time since this started, she didn't immediately deny it. But she didn't admit it either. Instead, she exhaled slowly and said, "So you followed me now?" There it was again. Not what she did, but what I did. I felt something in me harden. "Yes," I said. "I did." She shook her head, almost like she was disappointed. "This is getting unhealthy," she said. "Seriously, unhealthy." I let that sit for a second. Then I said, "You were with him." Not a question. A statement. She looked away. "And That was the closest thing to confirmation I'd gotten from her directly. But she still wasn't going to give it to me. Not fully. Not honestly. Instead, she said, "You're making this into something bigger than it is." And that's when I realized, even now, even after everything, she was still trying to control the story, still trying to shrink it, bend it, redefine it. Like if she could just frame it the right way, it wouldn't be what it clearly was. And yet, that's when the anger came back, stronger than before. That line, "You're making this into something bigger than it is." Yeah, that's the one that finally set me off. Not yelling, not throwing things. Just something inside me snapped into place. Because at that point, it wasn't even about the cheating anymore. It was the constant rewriting of reality. The lies, the minimization, the way she looked me in the eye after everything I'd seen, and still tried to make it seem small. I took a step closer. "Bigger than it is?" I repeated. "You're meeting another guy behind my back, lying about it, and I'm the one exaggerating?" She crossed her arms, defensive immediately. "I didn't say that," she replied. "You're twisting my words again." There it was. Script, page 1. I shook my head. "No, I'm done with that," I said. "I saw you. I read the messages. I know about the emails. This isn't confusion anymore. This is you lying over and over again." That landed. I could see it in her face. Not guilt, but pressure. Like the walls were finally closing in a bit. But instead of breaking, she doubled down. "So what?" she said, sharper now. "What exactly do you want me to say?" That question, yeah, it hit weird. Because the answer should have been obvious. "The truth," I said. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "You wouldn't even know what that is anymore," she replied. I just stared at her. "That's your defense?" I asked. "That I'm too far gone to recognize honesty?" She shrugged. "I'm saying you've already decided what this is in your head. So anything I say won't matter." That was new. Not denial. Not fully. More like sidestepping responsibility by blaming my perception. It almost sounded reasonable if you ignored everything else. But I didn't. I stepped back, ran a hand through my hair, trying to keep myself grounded. "Okay," I said slowly. "Then let's make it simple." She didn't respond, just watched me. "Are you seeing him?" I asked. Clear question. Yes or no? She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. Then, "It's not like that." I closed my eyes for a second. "Of course." "Then what is it like?" I asked. She sighed, like I was exhausting her. "We hang out sometimes," she said. "We talk. It's not this huge dramatic thing you're making it into." I felt my jaw tighten. "You slept with him." Again, statement, not question. Silence. And that silence said everything. I looked at her, really looked this time, at how calm she was trying to appear, how controlled, how she avoided direct answers unless she could reshape them. And something clicked. This wasn't a mistake she regretted. This was something she was managing, balancing, and I was just one side of it. That realization. Yeah. That's when the anger started fading again. Not because things were okay, but because something else was taking its place. Something colder, more final. Because for the first time, I wasn't thinking, "How do we fix this?" I was thinking, "Why am I still here?" That question, "Why am I still here?" just stayed in my head, on repeat, because suddenly, everything looked different. Not through the lens of "we can fix this" or "maybe there's an explanation," but through something way more honest. She knows what she's doing. She's not stopping. And she doesn't respect me enough to even admit it. That combination, yeah, it changes things. I looked at her again, and it hit me how calm she seemed now. Not defensive like before. Not even that angry. More like she'd adjusted. Like she realized I wasn't going to yell, wasn't going to cause a scene, and now she could just manage the situation. That pissed me off in a completely different way. "You're not even sorry," I said. She blinked, slightly thrown off by that. "I didn't say that," she replied. "You didn't have to," I said. "It's obvious." She rolled her eyes, but there was less bite in it this time. You want me to beg or something? She asked. Would that make you feel better? That one landed hard. Because it told me exactly how she saw this. Not as something she did wrong, but as something I was reacting to incorrectly. I want you to be honest, I said. Just once. I am being honest, she shot back. I actually laughed at that. Not loudly. Just disbelief. You're still lying even now, I said. After everything. After I saw you with him. After I read what you wrote about me. That last part caught her attention. Her expression changed slightly. What are you talking about? She asked. The emails, I said. The ones where you call me boring. Emotionally exhausting. Stuck. She froze. And there it was. Not denial this time. Recognition. For a second, the room felt completely still. Then she looked away and muttered, You weren't supposed to see that. That line. Yeah, that one cut deep. Not, I shouldn't have said that. Not, I'm sorry. Just, you weren't supposed to know. I nodded slowly. Right? I said. That's the problem. She crossed her arms again, but it felt weaker now. You went digging, she said. You don't get to act surprised when you find things you don't like. I stared at her. Things I don't like? I repeated. You're talking about cheating on me and lying about it like it's just inconvenient information. She didn't respond to that directly. Instead, she said, I've been unhappy for a while. And yeah, there it was. The justification. The shift from what she did to why she did it. I took a breath. Then you talk to me, I said. You don't build a whole second life behind my back. She shrugged. I tried, she said. You just didn't listen. That part actually made me pause. Because I went back through my memory. Conversations, arguments, moments where she seemed distant. But nothing that justified this. Nothing that even came close. I didn't know it was like this, I said. Well, now you do, she replied. Flat. Final. Like that explained everything. And that's when it really settled in. This wasn't going to turn into some emotional breakdown where she admits everything and we start rebuilding. This was her version of owning it. Minimize. Justify. Shift blame. No real remorse. No real accountability. And standing there, listening to her say all that, I felt something inside me finally let go. Not anger. Not sadness exactly. Just detachment. Because the person I thought I was married to, she wasn't standing in front of me anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a while. After that, the conversation kind of stopped feeling like a conversation. It turned into two people standing in the same room, speaking different languages, neither really reaching the other anymore. She kept trying to justify it in fragments. I felt ignored. You were always busy. It just happened. And I kept noticing the same pattern underneath all of it. Nothing was ever her responsibility. Everything was either my fault, the situation's fault, or just something that happened. At some point I said, You didn't just happen to lie for months. That made her go quiet for a moment. But only a moment. Then she said, So what now? That question hit differently than before. Not what is happening. Not what do you need. But what now, like we were negotiating a schedule change, not a collapsed marriage. I didn't answer right away, because I was realizing something important in real time. I wasn't arguing to get truth anymore. I already had it. I wasn't trying to understand her anymore. I already did. And I wasn't trying to fix it anymore. Because there was nothing left to fix that didn't require her to actually take responsibility. And she wasn't doing that. So I said the only honest thing I could say. I don't know. She frowned slightly. You don't know? I shook my head. No, I said. I don't know why I'm still having this conversation. That shifted the tone again. She looked at me like I was the one being irrational now. Because we're married, she said. Because we should figure it out. I almost laughed again. Figure out what? I asked. How many people you've been lying to me about? How long it's been going on? Or how to pretend it didn't happen. That made her tighten up again. You're being dramatic, she said. And there it was. The word again. Dramatic. Not hurt. Not betrayed. Not lied to. Dramatic. I nodded slowly. You know what's interesting? I said. She didn't respond. You keep saying I'm overreacting, I continued. But I only know what I caught, not what I didn't. That landed differently. I saw it in her face. A flicker. Not guilt. More like calculation again. Like she was deciding how much I actually knew. And that's when I realized something even worse. She still wasn't being fully honest. Even now, even with everything exposed, there was still more she wasn't saying. And instead of fear or shock, I just felt tired. Deeply, completely tired. I'm going to bed, I said. She blinked. That's it. I looked at her. For now, I said, and I walked past her. No resolution, no agreement, no dramatic exit, just distance, because I needed space to think clearly, and because staying in that room any longer felt like participating in something I was already done with. Behind me, she said something. I think it was my name, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel pulled back in. That night I didn't really sleep. Not in the usual I kept thinking about it way. More like my brain had stopped trying to argue with itself and just kept replaying everything like a recording I couldn't turn off. Her face when she said, "You weren't supposed to see that." The casual way she said it just happened. The complete lack of anything resembling regret. At some point around 4 a.m., I got up and went into the kitchen. I stood there in the dark for a while, just thinking, because something important had shifted. Not the fact that she cheated, that part was already confirmed. It was the realization that even after being caught, she was still controlling the narrative. Still choosing what was true and what wasn't. Still acting like I was the one misinterpreting reality. And that's when I started thinking less about her and more about me. How long I'd been absorbing that pattern. Doubt, confrontation, denial, me backing down. Over and over. Not just in this situation, but earlier moments too. Smaller things I'd ignored because I didn't want conflict. Because I trusted her. Because I assumed honesty was the default. I sat down at the table and opened my phone. Started scrolling back through messages. Not just recent ones, months back. And the inconsistencies were everywhere now that I knew what I was looking for. Late replies that didn't match her schedule. Stories that changed slightly when retold. Trips out that never quite had full details. It wasn't hidden perfectly. It was just assumed I wouldn't question it. That realization made my stomach turn. Because it meant this wasn't some sudden collapse. It was something that had been building quietly for a long time. Around morning, she came into the kitchen like nothing happened. Hair messy, tired eyes, same routine energy. She poured coffee and said, "Are you still being weird about last night?" I just looked at her, and I noticed something different in myself. No spike of anger. No urge to argue. Just clarity. "I'm not being weird," I said. She sighed. "Then what is this?" she asked. "Because you've been acting completely different." I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said. "I have." That made her pause. Not defensive immediately, curious, maybe cautious. I continued, "I think I've been trying to understand you the wrong way," I said. She frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means I kept assuming there was something to fix," I said. "That if I said the right thing or asked the right question, you'd be honest and we'd deal with it." She didn't respond. "So I kept engaging," I continued. "Kept arguing. Kept trying to get answers." I looked at her directly. "But you weren't trying to answer anything. You were trying to manage what I knew." Silence again. Longer this time. And I could see it now, her processing that this wasn't just another argument she could outlast. This was starting to move past her control. "You're not even sorry," I said. She blinked, slightly thrown off by that. "I didn't say that," she replied. "You didn't have to," I said. "It's obvious." She rolled her eyes, but there was less bite in it this time. "You want me to beg or something?" she asked. "Would that make you feel better?" That one landed hard, because it told me exactly how she saw this. Not as something she did wrong, but as something I was reacting to incorrectly. "I want you to be honest," I said. "Just once." I am being honest, she shot back. I actually laughed at that. Not loudly, just disbelief. You're still lying even now, I said. After everything. After I saw you with him. After I read what you wrote about me. That last part caught her attention. Her expression changed slightly. What are you talking about? She asked. The emails, I said. The ones where you call me boring. Emotionally exhausting. Stuck. She froze. And there it was. Not denial this time. Recognition. For a second, the room felt completely still. Then she looked away and muttered, You weren't supposed to see that. That line. Yeah, that one cut deep. Not, I shouldn't have said that. Not, I'm sorry. Just, you weren't supposed to know. I nodded slowly. Right? I said. That's the problem. She crossed her arms again, but it felt weaker now. You went digging, she said. You don't get to act surprised when you find things you don't like. I stared at her. Things I don't like? I repeated. You're talking about cheating on me and lying about it like it's just inconvenient information. She didn't respond to that directly. Instead, she said, I've been unhappy for a while. And yeah, there it was, the justification, the shift from what she did to why she did it. I took a breath. Then you talk to me, I said. You don't build a whole second life behind my back. She shrugged. I tried, she said. You just didn't listen. That part actually made me pause, because I went back through my memory. Conversations, arguments, moments where she seemed distant, but nothing that justified this. Nothing that even came close. I didn't know it was like this, I said. Well, now you do, she replied. Flat, final. Like that explained everything. And that's when it really settled in. This wasn't going to turn into some emotional breakdown where she admits everything and we start rebuilding. This was her version of owning it. Minimize, justify, shift blame. No real remorse. No real accountability. And standing there, listening to her say all that, I felt something inside me finally let go. Not anger. Not sadness exactly. Just detachment. Because the person I thought I was married to, she wasn't standing in front of me anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a while. That okay seemed to unsettle her more than anything I'd said before. Because she was used to pushback. Used to me questioning, arguing, trying to fill in the gaps she kept creating. But when I didn't do that, there was nothing left for her to deflect against. She just stood there for a moment, watching me like she was trying to figure out what version of me she was dealing with now. Finally she said, So what? You're just going to sit there and act like this? I shrugged slightly. I'm not acting, I said. I'm just done arguing about what's already clear. That hit a nerve. Her tone sharpened again. Clear? She repeated. You keep saying that like you know everything. I looked at her for a second, and I realized something important. She still believed there was a version of this where she could control how much I understood. Like there was still leverage left. There's nothing left to know that changes the situation, I said. She frowned. That's not true. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said again. Same word. Same calm. And that's when she got frustrated. You're being impossible right now, she said. If you just listened. I did listen, I interrupted, still calm. For weeks. Months, actually. That made her pause. Because I wasn't escalating. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't giving her the usual feedback loop to feed off. I continued. I listened when you said I was paranoid. I listened when you said I was imagining things. I listened when you said I was controlling. I listened when you said I was the problem. I paused. And none of that was true. Her jaw tightened slightly. That's your version of it, she said. I almost smiled, but not in a happy way. Exactly, I said. Your version. My version. That's the point. She looked away for a second, like she was trying to reset the direction of the conversation. Then she said, So what do you want from me? That question again. But now it didn't feel like negotiation. Felt like delay. Like she was still trying to find a way to keep me emotionally engaged in the cycle. I stood up from the chair. and that changed the energy in the room immediately. Not aggressively, just decisively. "I don't want explanations anymore," I said. "I don't want half-truths. I don't want revisions of what already happened." She watched me carefully now. "I want distance," I continued. That made her expression shift slightly. "Distance?" she repeated. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "From this." There was a pause. Longer this time. And I could see it now, her processing that this wasn't just another argument she could outlast. This was starting to move past her control. "You're talking like it's over," she said. I didn't answer immediately, because I was noticing something else in myself again. Not anger. Not even sadness exactly. Just acceptance forming in real time. Finally I said, "I don't know what you call it," I replied. "But I know what it can't be anymore." She stared at me, and for the first time in this entire situation, she didn't have an immediate response. After that, the silence that followed felt different from all the previous ones. Before, silence usually meant she was preparing her next defense, deciding whether to deny, attack, or redirect. This time, it felt like she didn't have a clean option left. She finally broke it. "So what?" she said quietly. "You're just going to leave? Over this?" I exhaled slowly, not out of frustration. More like I'd been holding my breath for too long without noticing. "It's not this," I said. "It's everything that came with it." She shook her head immediately. "You're acting like I'm some monster," she said. "Like I destroyed your life." That word choice stood out. Monster. I looked at her for a moment. "I'm not calling you a monster," I said. "I'm saying I can't stay in something where I'm lied to constantly and then told I'm the problem for noticing it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, no quick comeback. So I continued. "I didn't wake up one day and decide to stop trusting you," I said. "It happened slowly, because every time I tried to understand what was going on, I got a different version of reality depending on what suited you." Her expression tightened. "That's not fair," she said. I nodded. "Maybe," I said, "but it's accurate." That landed heavier than anything else I'd said. Because it wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was just observation. She looked away for a second, like she was trying to reset the conversation again. Then she said, "So what do you want from me?" That question again. But now it didn't feel like negotiation. It felt like delay. Like she was still trying to find a way to keep me emotionally engaged in the cycle. I stood up from the chair, and that changed the energy in the room immediately. Not aggressively, just decisively. "I don't want explanations anymore," I said. "I don't want half-truths. I don't want revisions of what already happened." She watched me carefully now. "I want distance," I continued. That made her expression shift slightly. "Distance?" she repeated. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "From this." There was a pause. Longer this time. And I could see it now, her processing that this wasn't just another argument she could outlast. This was starting to move past her control. "You're talking like it's over," she said. I didn't answer immediately, because I was noticing something else in myself again. Not anger. Not even sadness exactly. Just acceptance forming in real time. Finally I said, "I don't know what you call it," I replied. "But I know what it can't be anymore." She didn't respond right away. For a moment it looked like she might push again, argue, defend, rewrite it one more time. That familiar pattern was still there in her face. But it didn't come. Instead, she just stood there, staring at me like she was trying to find the version of me that would still engage in the fight. And I wasn't there anymore. Finally, she let out a short breath. "Okay," she said quietly. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No final attempt to pull me back in. Just, "Okay." And weirdly, that felt like the most honest thing she'd said in a long time. I nodded once. "Okay," I repeated. Not agreement. Just acknowledgement. I went into the bedroom and started packing a bag. Not everything. Not dramatically throwing clothes everywhere or making a scene out of leaving. Just essentials. Simple. Quiet. At some point, she stood in the doorway, watching. "You're really doing this," she said. I didn't look up immediately. "Yes," I said. There was a pause. Then she asked, "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But not here." That answer seemed to frustrate her more than anything emotional I could have said, because it was final without being angry. She leaned against the frame of the door. "You know," she said, "you're going to regret doing this so fast." I zipped the bag. "No," I said. "I don't think I will." That was the truth. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because staying in something built on constant lying and denial had already been eating away at me for a long time. I just didn't see the shape of it clearly until now. I walked past her with the bag. She didn't stop me. She didn't follow. She just stood there as I opened the door. Before I left, I paused for a second. Not because I was unsure, but because I realized something important I wanted to say. So I turned back once. "I hope you figure out whatever you needed to figure out," I said. Not sarcastic. Not bitter. Just done. She didn't answer. And then I left. Looking back, the biggest thing I learned wasn't about cheating. It was about how dangerous constant dishonesty can be long before the truth is ever fully exposed. Small lies don't stay small. They build an alternate version of reality where the person lying always has an escape route and the other person slowly loses trust in their own judgment. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: pay attention to patterns, not promises. And don't ignore your instincts just because you don't have proof yet. By the time proof arrives, you've usually already been living in the truth for a while, you just didn't want to name it. And sometimes, leaving isn't about anger. It's about finally accepting what's already happened.